Well, good afternoon, folks. Is there anything interesting going on in the world that we ought to talk about? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think we might be able to find something to delve into. How y'all doing out there today? My name is Brian Trippett. I am the Front Porch Conservative. Welcome to a very special edition of Columbus Day live stream. This is a surprise live stream, literally to me, because you know I wasn't necessarily expecting to plan on doing this, but you know what? With everything that's going on in the world right now, particularly over in the Middle East, I thought, well, if ever we're going to do this, today's the day. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm able to do that, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But again, we'll give everybody some time to get into the room if they're able to join us. Again, this one was very unexpected. Normally, my live streams are planned out and everybody has plenty of advance notice and everything else, but we've done our best to advertise and tell people we're here and find some things to talk about. Hey, oh my goodness! Hello, sir. How are you doing? Long time no see. Daggone it, I've got to catch up with you. Ladies and gentlemen, the inestimable Christian Watson, probably one of the best commentators on matters political and philosophical. He's here in the chat with us. Glad to have you, sir. Glad to have you. Yeah, this is going to be a very... It's not an unplanned stream, because you know me. I mean, if you've watched my live streams long enough, my videos long enough, there's a certain process to what I do. But as far as this one being on the books like days in advance, talking about it, not so much the case. But this one's going to be a little bit different. So we'll start letting everybody filter into the room. Again, my name is Brian Trippett. I'm the Front Porch Conservative. For those of you who aren't familiar with me, I am a social media commentator on politics, culture, etc. I hope you're finding my channel for the first time today, and we're looking forward to having a discussion about what's going on. I suppose some explanations are in order, because normally viewers to my channel don't catch me during the day doing a live stream. Well, I happen to have the blessing today in my occupational life of having the day off, and it affords me the opportunity to do something like this, which normally I don't get the chance to do. I must admit, I am extremely envious of my fellow social media commentators and colleagues who, they're able to do this full time. And I'm not speaking ill of them in any way, shape, or form. They've been blessed to be able to do it. Um, Christian Watson's a great example of that. And there are many others who are able to do this on a full time basis. So, um, but yeah, today I just happened to have the day off from my occupational life. And I thought, you know what? There's too much going on in the world for me not to be commenting on it. So I set up this live stream. Like I said, I pushed it out to as many different places as I possibly could. And I said, you know what? We're just going to talk and let the chips fall where they may. So, yeah, as you might expect, I've got some things to say about what's going on over in the Middle East. But before I even get into my thoughts about it, I want to add, or should I say, preface this live stream with a comment from Carrie Smith of Deprogrammed. Wonderful lady. If you're not subscribed to her channel, please do so. She is probably one of the smartest and wisest individuals in social media right now. She's got her head screwed on straight and her feet are definitely on the ground. And on top of that, she wears some of the coolest hats on a lady I think I've ever seen. So, yeah, check her out. But I want to start with something that she said, which kind of informs, or maybe better say guides, what I'm doing today. And it's this: you don't have to have a quick opinion on every world political situation. In fact, you probably shouldn't. Social media, or having a modest following, has corrupted some people's brains to the point where they think that they have to develop a take right away and get it out there. There's probably no one who needs your take. Maybe the best thing you can do is live your life offline and try not to say something monstrous like defend terrorism or brutality in pursuit of internet attention. Peace be with you. Now, I know that Carrie was not directing that at me. Okay, so I'm not angry, upset, or anything else. But I think her comment is a good place to start in this discussion. And here's what I'm getting at. As a general rule of thumb, I always try to not be the first one on the scene with a take. or a comment or whatever. And there's a reason for that. I think that the rush, the desire to be the first one out there leads to the opportunity, unfortunately, for mistakes, because we don't get all the information first, and then we say something that's either not wise or not accurate, or perhaps even both. So as a general rule of thumb, I always try to like gauge my reaction before I start weighing in on it, or measure my reaction. Now, some people are going to say, well, you're in social media, you're supposed to be commenting on things. That's right. But no one says I have to be the first one to comment on it. Okay. There is something to be said for the wisdom of saying, all right, let's stop. Let's take a breath. Let's get some information. Let's try to get an informed perspective. And then let's say something about it. Or as the old expression goes, it doesn't matter if you can get the bone china to market. If there's cracks in it, who cares if you got the wagon there first? The point of the proposition is to get the wagon to market with the bone china that you're carrying, and make sure that the bone china doesn't have any cracks or breaks in it. A little example from Little House on the Prairie. Yeah, I watched a lot of TV growing up. Sue me, okay? So that it sort of informs where we're starting in this live stream. And we are on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter. So if you do happen to be watching us right now, if you would be so kind, I'm not saying you have to, but if you have the opportunity and you would just take a moment, please tweet out or Gettr out or Truth Social out or Facebook out, or however you have the ability to do it. Just send a message out to everybody. Say, hey, come on in. Let's just sit down and talk about this. And Leanne, hello to you. I was wondering if you're going to be able to slip in for this one. My love, always a pleasure to see you. With regard to Obama and Clinton, I'm not sure why they haven't responded yet. I've got some suspicions, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So that's the first thing that informs me is, okay, let's take our time. Let's talk this thing out. The second thing that informs this live stream today is, oh, bless your heart, dear. Saw the notice and you jumped on. You are wonderful. You are a sweetheart. Now, I hope I'm not taking you away from your office work, because I don't need you in trouble with your boss, okay? It's like, I got enough people in my life mad at me. I don't need the employers mad at me. It's like, okay. But anyway, there's a second thing that informs me is I'm not necessarily here to give you solutions or answers to how this is going to get solved. Number one, I don't think I have that kind of wisdom. I've got some opinions about what I think ought to happen, but I'm not going to sit here and definitively tell you, yes, by George, this is the answer, and you need to make this happen. This needs to be your opinion. No, I'm not doing that to you. With this live stream, I want to give you as much information as I've been able to cull together in the past few hours. And, from there, give my opinions, hear your opinions. We'll all see what everybody's got to say. So right now, there's some folks jumping in on Rumble. Hello, you Rumblers over there. Bless your hearts. Glad to see you. There's some folks here on YouTube. There's probably some folks following along on Twitter. And, like I said, if opportunity allows it, send out a tweet, send out a Gettr, send out a Truth Social, whatever. And let's talk about this stuff, because I think there's a lot going on here that definitely needs to be addressed. So those are two of the things that are kind of informing what's going on in my brain right now. But by now, everyone has heard about what's happened in Israel. And if you haven't, I'll go ahead and kind of fill in the gaps. On Saturday morning, an attack was launched upon the nation of Israel by Hamas out of the Gaza Strip, killing hundreds of Israelis, injuring thousands. And the nation of Israel has declared war. First time in a long time they've done something like this, or have been forced into a position of having to do something like this. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the geography of the Middle East, or particularly the nation of Israel, I'll put this up on the screen just to give you an idea. This is Israel. runs all the way from north-south, from the boundaries of the Jordan River, the Sea of Galilee to the north, the Dead Sea in the south, Mediterranean's on one side. Now, this little strip down here where I've got the pointer, this is the Gaza Strip. It's surrounded on one side by the Mediterranean Sea, and to its southwest is Egypt, more particularly the Sinai Peninsula. Okay. It is in Gaza where Hamas is more or less housed, for lack of a better way of saying it. And Hamas has had control of the Gaza Strip since 2006, I want to say, as part of a brokered arrangement with the Israelis. Hamas controls Gaza, the Gaza Strip, more appropriately it's called. And from that vantage point, attacks were launched into Israel in its south and its central areas. So, where does everything stand right now? Well, I'll take you now to the Associated Press. And this is just an updated headline as much as I can get it. Here we go. Associated Press. Israel vows to punish Gaza as region and world feel ripples from Hamas attack. This last update was put on at about 1:26 p.m. Eastern. Israel's military ordered a complete siege of the Gaza Strip on Monday, halting deliveries of food, fuel, and supplies to its 2.3 million people as it pounded the Hamas-ruled territory with waves of airstrikes in retaliation for the militants' bloody weekend incursion. More than 2 days after Hamas launched its surprise attack, the Israeli military said it has largely gained control of its southern towns where it had been battling Hamas gunmen. Israel's vaunted military and intelligence apparatus was caught completely off guard by Hamas, resulting in heavy battles in its streets for the first time in decades. Okay, let's get into this, because there's a lot to digest just in that little bit. I want to go back to that map and just show you something as it relates to what we just read. I ask you to notice something about the Gaza Strip. It's completely surrounded. Now, what I'm getting at is this. To its immediate west is the Mediterranean Sea. To its southwest is the Sinai Peninsula, Egypt. And then everywhere else is Israel. If the Israelis, and according to reports at this stage, they have called up 300,000 reservists. That's a big, big army. If they want to surround the Gaza Strip all the way from the Egypt-Israeli border all the way to the top end of the Gaza Strip, they can do it. And they can enforce it. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, that's a very measured response on the part of the Israelis. I mean, they're doing a siege. No. You have to understand something about the Gaza Strip. By all accounts, there's nothing there. Now, by nothing there, I mean literally. It's not like they've got minerals to mine. It's not like they've got oil production. It's not like they've got any number of things where economically these 2.3 million people could sustain themselves. They've got nothing. Everything they've got, electricity, water, food, supplies, everything else, if the Israelis aren't letting it in, or it's not coming in by way of the Mediterranean Sea, they're cut off, unless it's coming up out of Egypt. But even the Egyptians right now, according to reports, are blockading Gaza. So, this has the potential to turn very bloody and very violent. So, that gets to $1 million question. Why now? And why is Hamas doing this? Well, I want to play you a snippet of a discussion last night between Viva Fry and Robert Barnes. And as you might expect, like all of us, they got into this. And it was a perspective I hadn't quite thought about, but the more I did, the more it makes sense. So I'm going to pull this up, and the setup for this is, why is Hamas choosing to do this right now at this time? So I want to play you the comments from attorney Robert Barnes. Take a listen to this.
But if you look at it from the perspective of Hamas or the perspective of the PLO, there's no alternative but their current strategies, for the very simple reason that if they give up the war against Israel, if they accept an independent state, which is the Russian proposed solution, which Yasser Arafat himself rejected at the Trump peace accords, and not Trump, the Clinton peace accord efforts, Camp David II in 1999, they will lose all their money. I mean, like, what would happen if you had an independent Palestinian state that was not at war with Israel? Well, where are they going to get their money? They don't have any resources. They don't have any internal economy. They've been stripped bare of a lot of their intellectual capital. Those people have fled and got the heck out, got somewhere else wherever they could over the past half century. But their entire monetary support comes from global donations for the purposes of them constantly fighting a war against Israel.
Now there's a lot to unpack in that little clip. Oh, and as usual, Leanne, you hang on, dear. We're going to get into that too. Trust me. We're not letting these two subjects go by. We're absolutely going to get into this. I want you to think back, if you're watching this, I want you to think back to the late 1990s, okay? Ehud Barak was the prime minister of Israel at the time. The late Yasser Arafat was the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, or the PLA or PLO, depending on what you want to call it. And Bill Clinton was president. Clinton arranged a peace summit at Camp David between Ehud Barak and Yasser Arafat. Now, a lot of people, if they didn't know any better, would work from the assumption that all Israeli prime ministers are the same, in that they don't negotiate with terrorists, they don't negotiate with the PLO, they don't negotiate with Yasser Arafat. Ehud Barak was different. And he came to Camp David with a proposal that was stunning, absolutely stunning for what it offered. And it was this. In short, it was everything the PLO wanted. Control of the West Bank, half of Jerusalem, everything Yasser Arafat and the PLO had said they wanted for decades. Ehud Barak, the then Prime Minister of Israel, offered up to the PLO on a silver platter. And upon hearing the news that Yasser Arafat and the PLO were being given everything they said they had wanted for decades, guess what happened? Yasser Arafat turned it down. Now, there's various theories on why it happened. I'll give you mine. Okay. Basically, what it gets down to is Yasser Arafat did not want to take out the trash. Huh? What? Huh? Let me explain. There is a scene, if you are a film buff, from the movie Lawrence of Arabia, where this council of leaders was in Damascus, and Lawrence of Arabia is trying to arrange for sanitation in a certain part of Damascus. And the prince at the time wanted no part of it because he didn't want to take out the trash. Now, I'm loosely explaining that, but that's more or less what it gets down to. The idea is this. If Yasser Arafat would have accepted Ehud Barak's deal as offered, he would have been responsible for taking out the trash. In other words, instead of fighting the Israelis, the PLO, or PLA, depending on how you want to call it, would have a nation of their own. Okay? which means Yasser Arafat would be in charge of said nation, which means Yasser Arafat would have to figure out how to make it work. He didn't want to do that. Barnes is onto something here, and it's the dirty little secret, or one of them anyway, as it relates to the problems between the Israelis and the Palestinians. If Hamas or Hezbollah or the Martyrs Brigade or whatever group you want to talk about, if they wind up making peace with Israel, then they've got to figure out how to make it work. They've got to figure out how to provide multi-millions of Palestinians living inside the borders of Israel, inside the borders of what will then be their own nation. They got to figure out how to make this thing work. And that's something they don't want to do. And we have, hello, this is an interesting comment. Let's put this up here. The only ones winning right now are the elites in control of every country. Those losing out are we, the plebes. We are falling for this horrible distraction of fighting amongst ourselves everywhere. I can't disagree with any of that. I cannot disagree with one word of that. That is a appropriately salient observation. And Gypsy Muse, if this is your first time visiting the front porch, a tip of the hat to you. We're glad to have you. I'm not sure if it is. I think I've seen you in here before, but glad to have you. Nice for you to be here. But yeah, you're right. The elites are running every country right now in one form or another. And when it comes to the American people, we're the ones losing out. But we'll get into some more of that a little bit later. So, we know what happened. We have an idea, perhaps, of why it happened. In other words, why did Hamas launch this attack? You're no longer a lurker. You have jumped in the pool of the water. Well, the water is warm. It's friendly for everybody. We're glad you're here. No more lurking, daggone it. No lurkers are allowed, but daggone it, stop that lurking. But yeah, in all seriousness, Gypsy, we're glad to have you. I'm serious, genuinely glad to have you here. So we know what happened. We have an idea of the why. Let's get into the question of what this siege is going to mean. Let me show you an article from Breitbart, and we'll read in this a little bit and make some comments on it. Israel announces complete siege of the Gaza Strip, cutting off water, food, and electricity, vows to destroy military capability of Hamas. And there's another reason why I've got this article, and I'll show you here in a minute. Look at that, man. That is some nasty-looking firepower. Article by Kurt Zindulka. Israel has announced a complete siege of the Gaza Strip as hundreds of thousands of troops are preparing to launch an assault on the Hamas terror group responsible for the deadly attacks across Israel over the weekend. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said following a situation assessment with Israel Defense Forces Southern Command, the military will enact, quote, a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, preventing supplies such as water, food, and electricity from entering the region. The defense minister said, according to the Times of Israel, quote, I ordered a full siege on the Gaza Strip. No power, no food, no gas. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we act accordingly, Gallant said. The Israel Defense Forces also said it's currently waging widespread air attacks against Hamas targets throughout the Gaza Strip. The IDF's top spokesman, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, said that the military has mobilized 300,000 reservists over the past 48 hours, saying, we have never drafted so many reservists on such a scale. We are going on the offensive. The chief military spokesman went on to say that Israeli troops have regained control over the border towns and that some clashes with Hamas terrorists are continuing, saying, quote, we are now carrying out searches in all communities and clearing the area. A little further into this article, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus of the IDF said that the attacks on Israel by the Islamist terror group were, quote, unprecedented and therefore required an unprecedented response, and that the goal is the destruction of Hamas's military capabilities to strike Israel. Conricus went on to say that one of the chief goals of the military operation will be to ensure that, quote, Hamas no longer able to carry out or no able to govern the Gaza Strip, and that the situation is fundamentally different than it was 2 days ago. At the end of this war, we will change the situation for the better. For Israeli civilians, it will be better, and for Palestinians as well. Now, here's the other reason why I had this article. According to the latest estimates, over 800 people in Israel have been killed by Hamas terrorists, including some 260 who were massacred at a music festival in southern Israel on Saturday. More than 2,500 have been wounded in the fighting, and over 100 are believed to have been taken hostage by the Palestinians. According to Rear Admiral Hagari, at least 4,400 rockets have rained down on Israel since the start of the fighting on Saturday morning, which coincided with the Jewish holiday of Shemini Atzeret, the final day of the annual High Holy Day cycle. The Palestinians, meanwhile, have claimed that 493 people have died in Gaza and a further 2,751 wounded. The Israeli Defense Forces said that it plans to be able to inform worried family members within the next 48 hours about the fate of their loved ones. There have been reports of missing nationals, including from Britain, Germany, and the United States. You know, I can sit here and read these words all the time. But I mean, I guess I just want to think about this in terms of the human loss. 800 people 800 Israelis, and if the reports out of Gaza are to be believed, about 500 Palestinians. So 1,300 people are dead, and over 5,000 are wounded. Let me say that again. About 1,300 people are dead, and over 5,000 are wounded on both sides. I don't care if it's what nation you're talking about. And yes, I know there's a lot of history that goes into this conflict. I'm not disputing any of that. But that kind of death toll and that kind of carnage ought to give people pause. And the thing is, it's just getting started. That's the truly frightening part about all of this. Yeah, absolutely. Per capita is huge. It really is. And another comment of yours, Leanne. My husband served with several. That I don't doubt. There is one group of people in the world militarily that I never ever want to mess with, and that's the Israelis. Because, man, don't get me wrong, they're civilized until they're not. When they go to war, they go to war. They don't screw around. And I guess that gets to something else that ought to be considered in all this. There's a lot of hate flowing on both sides of this thing. Now, we can sit here and argue whether it's justified. We can sit here and argue whether it's right. We can sit here and argue whether it's appropriate. We can whatever. Okay, I get that. I understand. But there is also another thing to factor into this. There are going to be a lot of innocent people who are going to be either hurt or, worse yet, possibly killed. I mean, it harkens me back to something, I guess, from when I was much younger, and that was the tail end of the Cold War between the Americans and the Soviet Union. And I'll never forget one of President Reagan's best speeches. I think it was one of his State of the Union. No, I take that back. It was an address to the nation from the Oval Office. And he was talking about the day when an American family could sit down with a Soviet family and just talk and realize that they had a whole lot more in common than whatever divided them by way of their ideology or their political beliefs. It's, fathers realizing that their sons are playing their respective sports and mothers realizing that their daughters are, little ballerinas or playing with dolls, and the men in the family talk about the jobs that they do. Reagan said, "I'm looking forward to the day when those two families can sit down together and talk. I'm looking forward to the day when, although there won't be perfect peace on this earth, it'd be a whole lot more peaceful than what it is right now." But that's a whole other discussion, which also delves into the theological. But you get my point. There are going to be very innocent people who don't want to fight. They just want to live their lives. They want to enjoy their families. They want to go to festivals and eat good food and talk to each other. And you'll probably hear me repeat this line throughout this live stream. It is my hope that, however this is settled, that the least amount of bloodshed and the most peace possible. So let me catch up with chat here for a second, because I want to get in on some of this. Not that I'm trying to eavesdrop on your conversations, but you are on my live stream and you are making comments. So yeah, I gotta see what's going on, Let's see. Which is why I do not understand why Hamas, quote, let in on Saturday. I've read many posts by the IDL who have said this couldn't have happened unless allowed. I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but that's another point we'll get to. So yeah. I could see how the information. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Yep. Very true. Very, very true. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Oh, bless your heart for popping on here today. I so appreciate it. Good to see you. But yeah, at this point, around 1,300 dead and over 5,000 wounded on both sides. And but that's not the worst of it. And here's where this starts getting very, very, very scary. Again, from Breitbart. 4 Americans killed in terrorist attack in Israel. Article written by Paul Boyes from yesterday. As many as 4 American citizens are confirmed to have been killed during the terrorist attack in Israel over the weekend, which at that point, at time of his writing, had claimed over 700 lives. Confirmation of the dead Americans came on Sunday after U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said the Biden administration had been working overtime to verify reports of missing and dead Americans in the midst of Hamas launching an unprecedented attack on Israel. 4 Americans have been killed in the attacks in Israel close to the Gaza border, and the death toll is expected to rise. Sources familiar with a Sunday briefing to key House committee members told CNN, quote, "We have reports that several Americans were killed. We're working overtime to verify that. At the same time, there are reports of missing Americans, and there again, we're working to verify those reports," Blinken told CNN's Dana Bash. CNN later learned from key House committees that 4 Americans were killed. Ooh. Yeah. And that is one more complication to this whole story. Very, very scary. Very scary. And yeah, that's something else that's going on right now that a lot of people. Well, I don't know that he's completely off the hook on this one. I think this whole thing is going to come back to bite Netanyahu, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Well, heck, we're already there. Let's just swerve into it. Israel has been claiming for the longest time that their borders are about as secure as any place in the world. And then all of a sudden, Hamas launches an attack against the most secure border, or one of the most secure borders in the world. That sort of begs the question. Prime Minister Netanyahu, which is it? Either you got a very, very secure border that militarily nobody can get through, or you don't. See, I think you're right in one sense, Leanne. He was catching heat for some of the problems domestically. I think this takes it off of him for a little while. But when the fog of war lifts on this thing, there are going to be a lot of questions being asked as to why it is or how it is that Hamas managed to slip through their defenses. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of things that definitely need to be asked of Prime Minister Netanyahu and the members of the Israeli Defense Force. Which, since we're sort of on the subject, I'll go. I mean, yeah. I mean, I have not seen this Twitter thread myself, but I'll go take a look at it because I definitely want to read this because there's a lot to get into with this one. A lot. So, yeah, I'll go take a look at this at some point today. Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. The kind of attack that Hamas did, I mean, hang gliders coming across the border, I mean, this was just extremely well executed. I mean, this isn't just some guys rolling up in a truck with some 50 caliber machine guns, and spraying some bullets around. This was coordinated, thought through, very, very, very well done. How? Well, that kind of gets to one of the other players in this drama. Take a look at this. Report. Iranian security officials helped Hamas plan terror attack on Israel. Article written by, again, Paul Boyes. In the wake of the horrific attack on Israel, which has left over 700 dead, reports have surfaced that Iranian security officials helped the terrorist organization Hamas plan the strike for weeks. Quote, Iranian security officials helped plan Hamas's Saturday surprise attack on Israel and gave the green light for the assault at a meeting in Beirut last Monday, according to senior members of Hamas and Hezbollah, another Iran-backed militant group, the Wall Street Journal reported on Sunday. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps officers, as well as 4 Iran-sponsored terrorist groups, including Hamas, reportedly attended meetings in Beirut where the operation had been planned. U.S. officials have said they have not seen evidence of Tehran's direct involvement in the attack. Okay, that's interesting. Quote, we have not seen evidence that Iran directed or was behind this particular attack, but there is certainly a long relationship, said U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on CNN. We don't have any information at this time to corroborate this account, a U.S. official said of the meetings. Mohammed Mirdawi, a senior Hamas official, has claimed that the group planned the attacks on its own. Quote, this is a Palestinian and Hamas decision. He said Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei praised the attacks in a post on Twitter. Quote, Zionist regime will be eradicated at the hands of the Palestinian people and the resistance forces throughout the region. There's a little more from the Wall Street Journal. A direct Iranian role would take Tehran's... Oh, sorry. Hang on. Boomered. Okay. A direct Iranian role would take Tehran's long-running conflict with Israel out of the shadows, raising the risk of a broader conflict in the Middle East. Senior Israeli security officials have pledged to strike at Iran's leadership if Tehran is found responsible for killing Israelis. The IRGC's broader plan is to create a multi-front threat that can strangle Israel from all sides. Hezbollah and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine in the north, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank, according to the senior Hamas and Hezbollah members and an Iranian official. Israel has said that Iran has had a hand in the attacks, although indirectly. Quote, we know that there were meetings in Syria and in Lebanon with other leaders of the terror armies that surround Israel, so obviously it's easy to understand that they tried to coordinate the proxies of Iran in our region. They tried to be coordinated as much as possible with Iran, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, said on Sunday. Ooh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. More news. Let's see. Hang on here. Oh, yeah, we're going to get into this. We're going to get into this. Don't small time republic. Glad you're here, brother. Good to see you, sir. Okay. Dude, if you've got a link to that article, could you drop it in chat? Because we'll just share it around to everybody. I'll be happy to put that up there. But yeah, the Daily Mail is great when it comes to stuff like this. I love reading UK Daily Mail. They're really good. Okay, please do, please do. That from Thunder B. Okay, tweet it to me. Yeah, Blinken's got all kinds of problems. We'll get to him in a little bit. He's a piece of work. Blinken reminds me of the guy in the movie Animal House. I forget what the character's name is, but it's played by a very young Kevin Bacon. He's that guy that in the midst of all the people running down the sidewalk at the end of the movie, he's saying, "Remain calm. Everything will be okay." And now the next thing you see him laying flat on the sidewalk, looking up, going, "Again, remain calm. Everything will be all right." That's what Blinken reminds me of. He's feckless, he's useless, he's ineffectual, he's a mouthpiece. And worse yet than all that, he's feckless, useless, and a mouthpiece. But worse than all that, he's an instigator, which we can get into that in a little bit. So, according to reports, it's altogether possible that the Iranians gave the green light to Hamas to pull this stunt. Now, this again. Oh, that was his character's name in the movie, Chip Diller. Okay, Chip. Anthony Blinken is the Chip Diller of the Biden administration. Yeah, and this is something that Blinken's also saying. Yes, sir. May I have another? Especially to the Chinese. Chip Diller. I gotta remember. See, this is why I have always said I have got the coolest audience on social media. The coolest audience, the smartest audience. Y'all come up with stuff that I can't always remember. So yes, bless your hearts. And that is truly sincere. That's not my way of saying you bunch of dummies. Chip Diller. Okay, I got to remember that one. Yeah. Okay. So it's altogether possible that the Iranians had a hand in this thing. I'm not saying they did. I'm not saying they didn't. But if they did, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. So, we know the what. We know the who. We have some inkling as to the why. But is there more why involved in this? Probably so. And I'm going to give you a take from somebody who, on all matters, domestic and international, I love to listen to. And if you're not following his stuff, I highly recommend him to you. Let me take you to an article written by the inestimable Michael Goodwin of the New York Post. He is one of my favorite writers. If for no other reason, he's got that gritty, kind of old school feel to him. Love this guy. Hamas terror attack on Israel reveals Iran's bloody intent. Now, I want to go into this article a little bit and read you one part of it that I think is very interesting. Talking about the differences between previous attacks on Israel and what's going on right now. Listen to this. Despite the similarities to past wars and flare-ups, this is not a copycat war. The Middle East is a very different place than it was 50 years ago. For one thing, the remarkable and expanding Israeli relationships with key Arab nations have reshaped the regional security map. The Abraham Accords, fashioned by the Trump administration, broke decades of diplomatic taboos and replaced hostility and threats with shared security arrangements, trade, and tourism. Kosher restaurants in Dubai symbolized an emerging new era. The crowning achievement of this movement was the growing and open rapport between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Although the two powerful nations have long met by secret military contacts, the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, clearly wants to complete the normalization process and likely would have done so in a second Trump term. His willingness to move forward now partly explains the timing of the Hamas attack and reveals a second major change in the region: Iran's military might and its roster of lethal proxies. The mullahs regard both Israel and the Saudis as enemies, and they simply could not abide the idea that its enemies would join forces. That backdrop explains Iran's praise of the Hamas attacks, saying in a statement that, quote, "What took place today is in line with a continuation of victories for the anti-Zionist resistance in different fields, including Syria, Lebanon, and occupied lands." One of the mullah's errand boy terror groups, Hezbollah, also issued a statement supporting Hamas and said the attack was a warning to, quote, "those seeking normalization with Israel." Oh, now before I get to my comment on this, I'm going to pop this up here. I have not seen this yet. It's in Australia now. Hamas sympathizer. Oh, crap. Oh, my God. Yeah. Bad news. Bad news. So, Robert Barnes theorizes that Hamas has no choice. They don't have economic development enough to sustain themselves if they ever stopped attacking Israel. And Michael Goodwin is speculating, as many have, by the way, that it's altogether possible that one of the other reasons why Hamas did this, or maybe more to the point that Iran greenlighted the attack, was the idea of the Israelis and the Saudis actually putting aside decades or hundreds or thousands of years of enmity and saying, okay, look, there are places we can work together. Let's try and make that happen. Iran couldn't stand the thought of that happening, and they have to keep the conflict going. They have to keep the tension going. Hence the attack. Let me play you a clip to further back up Goodwin's point. Again, this is from that live stream the other night with Robert Barnes and Viva Fry. I want you to take a listen to this.
Didn't say anything right away, because I think what the Saudis realized is what if they want to be a Dubai style future economy that's diversified away from oil, Arabian Football League, which is known as soccer here in America, be a prominent, successful international brand, tourism be internationally desirable. All of those things, they can't be associated with this kind of horrific terrorism. And that was Trump's genius, was deepening the wedge between the royals and the Hamas and Hezbollahs and Iranian-backed militias of the Middle East, while continuing to isolate Iran, because Iran is deeply committed to it. And of course, what this does is it rallies their demand. Well, why do they not want to bring in Palestinians? Why do they not give real economic aid to the Palestinians? Why is it always humanitarian aid? So that the Hamas and the Hezbollahs and the Palestinian Liberation Authority can control their populations by control of basic resources.
That makes a lot of common sense to me. And yeah, small time republic, I think you're absolutely right. There's something that a lot of people forget about the Iranians. They always just say that they're Arabs. No, they're not. They're not Arabs. They're Persians. And there's a profound difference culturally in those two things. Persians are much more cagey and have been for centuries, but that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, you begin to see what's happening here. The Iranians, if they were the ones that greenlighted this attack, and personally, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. It would not shock me at all. If they were the ones that greenlighted this deal, then yeah, their reasons make sense. They cannot let the Saudis and the Israelis get together. Because if peace were to break out in the Middle East, then Iran has an even bigger problem on their hands. Not only is their economy kind of shaky, even though they've got some of the biggest oil deposits in the world, okay, Then they've got the problem of figuring out what to do with 3.2 million people in the Gaza Strip who don't have any money, who don't have any resources. Now, my theory is they'll let them hang out to dry. Since they can't use them anymore to foment problems in the Middle East, the Iranians will probably cut Hezbollah and Hamas loose. But if they don't cut them loose, then you got to figure out what the heck do we do with them in a peaceful Middle East? I don't know. So they got to keep this thing going. Absolutely have to keep this thing going. Give you something else to think about. And this comes from one of my absolutely favorite writers who has been all over this thing since it started Saturday morning. If you're not following his work, either on his website or other places, I recommend him to you. Victor Davis Hanson, probably one of the smartest intellectuals that we've got in America coming or going right now. And this guy is very, very good. And if for no other reason, he understands history. I'm going to show you a part. Oh, yeah. Oh, he's amazing. Victor Davis Hanson's amazing. But this is a post he put on Twitter over the weekend. Why did Hamas stage a long-planned, carefully executed, and multifaceted attack on Israeli town soldiers and civilians, one designed to instill terror by executing non-combatants, taking hostages, and desecrating the bodies of the dead? And how were the killers able to enter Israeli proper in enough numbers to kill what could be thousands, hundreds, or perhaps eventually wound what could be thousands? Ostensibly, radical Palestinians wanted to stop any rumored rapprochement of the Gulf monarchies, the traditional source of much of their cash, and that gets back to what Barnes and Mike Goodwin were saying, by forcing the issue of Arab solidarity in times of, quote, war, especially through waging a gruesome attack aimed at civilians and encompassing executions and hostage-taking. Iran likely was the driving force to prompt the war, given its greatest fear is a Sunni Arab-Israeli rapprochement. Arab forces have only had success against Israel through surprise attacks during Israeli holidays, as in the Yom Kippur War, i.e., wasn't any accident that the present-day attack began 50 years almost to the day after the October 6, 1973 beginning of the Yom Kippur War. And so they struck again this Saturday during Simchat Torah, coming at the end of a week-long Jewish celebration of Sukkot, in hopes that others will join in what happened in 1973. So much for the Arab warnings not for Westerners to wage war during Ramadan. Hamas may have reckoned that recent Israeli turmoil and mass leftist street protests have proposed forms to the Israeli Supreme Court had led to a permanent internal division and thus a climate of domestic distraction, if not an erosion of deterrence. More importantly, in a larger sense, the Biden administration contributed to both the notion that Hamas was a legitimate Middle East player and to the perception that the U.S. was backing away from its traditional support for Israel to the delight of Hamas based on the following inexplicable policies. Oh, here we go. Okay, for all y'all out there in the audience, Leanne, up in Connecticut, Gypsy, Small Time Republic, all you folks over there on Rumble, and I got a question over on Rumble from Jackson's 2000. What do you think about undocumented immigrants? Well, I'll put it to you this way. The border ought to be tightened up, and if they are here illegally, deport them. For reasons of immigration policy, but perhaps even more important, national security, because we don't know who they are. Oh, that's cruel. You can't say something like that. Yes, I can. This is a social media platform where I'm allowed to give my opinion. Guess what? I just gave you my opinion. There's a lot of reasons why a nation needs to control its border, but there's one primarily above all else. Jackson's 2000, to answer your question. National security. Because if we don't know who and what is coming across our border, then we're not a sovereign nation. I'm sorry, we're just not. So I hope that answers your question. Trans people. Oh, okay. I'm starting to realize I got a troll on my hands here. Yeah, okay. Some of the rest of that I'm ignoring. Thanks a lot, Jackson's 2000. But the first question was good, so there you go. Yeah, you know you're growing as a social media platform when you start getting trolls. First we got Larry, and now we got this Jackson's 2000. So there you go. But yeah. So for all y'all out there in the audience who are like, Blinken, the Biden administration. Okay, let's get into this. Let's get into this because there is a lot to talk about. A lot. And we'll pick it back up with Victor Davis Hanson because he's got some stuff to say. I got some stuff that I want to bring to your all's attention. And, you know, as I said, I'm not necessarily here to convince you one way or another about what you should think about this. I just want to bring you some information, let you guys make your own decisions. Yeah, that's true too. I've heard that as well. Now that I'm not sure about, Gypsy. I am not totally sure about. That I will have to look into. And I will. Let me jot that one down for myself. I think they were wanting to be a part of it. But that I do not know. Okay. Let's pick it back up with Victor Davis Hanson. More importantly, in a larger sense, the Biden administration has contributed both to the notion that Hamas was a legitimate Middle East player and to the perception that the U.S. was backing away from its traditional support for Israel to the delight of Hamas based on the following inexplicable policies. Number one, in February, Secretary of State Blinken, or Chip Diller, as we love to call him here on the front porch, and I think that's what we're going to refer to him going forward. Secretary of State Blinken had bragged that not only had the Biden administration resumed massive aid to the PLA canceled by Trump, but cumulatively have transferred $1 billion, even as Palestinian authorities bragged that they would continue to pay bounties for families of, quote, martyrs, those killed while conducting terrorist attacks against Israel. And millions of American dollars also went into Gaza, run by Hamas, despite the Biden administration's efforts to keep mostly quiet the resumption of such inexplicable support. In this regard, note the current shameful State Department, quote, U.S. Office of Palestinian Affairs website news release that was posted after today's attack. It ended with this quite embarrassing, morally equivalent admonition. We urge all sides to refrain from violence and retaliatory attacks. Terror and violence solve nothing. All sides? Refrain from retaliatory attacks? Okay, let's get into some of this. Much has been made of a figure of money that was bandied about less than a month ago. I want you to think back in time, and I'm sure that viewers on this live stream right now and other people who are watching are very aware of this, but I'll bring this to your recollection in case you're not. About a month ago, the Biden administration announced that there would be a release of American prisoners being held, I believe, various parts of the Middle East. I want to say it was Iran specifically. But in doing so, the United States would free up access to the Iranian government of $6 billion that was being held at a bank in South Korea. Now, these were monies that they'd made off the sale of oil as being held, but they couldn't get to it. We released access to it. Now, that was about a month ago. And everybody at the time, and understandably so, said this was a mistake. We are trading money for hostages. We're violating our own policy that we don't negotiate with terrorists. They're going to use this money to harm somebody out there in the world. That this was a major league mistake. For the record, I did not disagree with that then, and I don't disagree with it now. Sooner or later, that money is going to wind up causing more harm to the world than it is good for the Iranian people. And Secretary of State Blinken was asked about this on CNN yesterday's State of the Union. He's being interviewed by Dana Bash, and I want you to listen to what he says. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, boy. I'm very sorry to hear that. I'm sorry to hear about any loss of life of Americans overseas, but like I said, folks, this is going to get way worse. Anyway, I'm going to play a snippet from the interview that Dana Bash did with Secretary of State Blinken, and it goes something like this.
While we're talking about Iran, I just have to ask you to, if you want to respond to what we're hearing from Republicans who are over and over since this happened, using the word appeasement when it comes to Iran and your administration. They criticize the decision to unfreeze $6 billion in Iranian funds. I know and want to state that that money, according to your administration, has not yet been unfrozen. Iran does not yet have it. But the accusation is that Iran's posture, that the U.S., your administration's posture towards Iran has helped contribute to this. I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, there are two things here. First, with regard to the funds that you mentioned that were released were made available to Iran for humanitarian purposes as part of getting Americans back who are being held and detained in Iran. Let's be very clear about this. And it's deeply unfortunate that some are playing politics when so many lives have been lost and Israel remains under attack. The facts are these. No U.S. Taxpayer dollars were involved. These were Iranian resources that Iran had accumulated from the sale of its oil that were stuck in a bank in South Korea. They have had from day one, under our law, under our sanctions, the right to use these monies for humanitarian purposes. They were moved from one account to another in another country to facilitate that use. As of now, not a single dollar has been spent from that account. And again, the account is closely regulated by the U.S. Treasury Department, so it can only be used for things like food, medicine, medical equipment. That's what this is about. And by the way, the previous administration set up a very similar mechanism to enable Iran to use its oil proceeds that were blocked in various places or stuck in various places for humanitarian purposes. So people are either misinformed or they're misinforming.
Okay, I'm going to stop that right there because there's a lot to chew on in that comment. And Gypsy, first of all, you're not offending me, okay? If I've never said this to you before, I'll say this to you and anybody who comes on the electronic front porch. As far as I'm concerned, you can say anything here you want, okay? That doesn't mean I may agree with you, but as far as I'm concerned, you're allowed to say it. This is a free speech zone. If you want to say something, say it. Like I said, I may disagree with you. I may present information that counters your opinion. You might present information that counters my opinion. That's fine. Okay? I have but one simple rule. Just be respectful. Be respectful to your fellow chatter. Be respectful to your host. I'll be respectful to you. And Gypsy, you can say whatever you want, honey. You're not going to bother me in the slightest. And yes, Dana, well, you call her mind control freak. I just call her a twit. And then she is. She's a piece of work. Okay, let's get into this commentary from Secretary of State Blinken. This money is for humanitarian purposes. It can only be spent on food, on clothing, on water, and not a thin dime of it has been spent on what's happening in Israel. They haven't accessed the account, and we do not, and the previous administration did this. I just love it when guys like Blinken just come up with the whole, "Yay, the other guys did it" defense. Oh, you be a man, prove you got something hanging below the belt and man up. If you did something, you did it. Don't give me the whole, well, the other guys did it defense. I don't want to hear that crap. Okay? You guys did this. You signed off on it. You did it. I don't want to hear the, well, Trump did it argument. That's crap. Okay? So, hey, Chip, man up here, okay? Yeah, and that's a good point. That's a great point. Says the Republicans are playing politics, and then he turns around and blames the Republicans. Small-time Republic, you are spot on, sir. As they say in Great Britain, you are spot on. Yeah, blames the Republicans, then he turns, says they're playing politics, and he turns around and blames the Republicans. Absolutely ridiculous. Okay? Now, I am going to offer a take. That probably some people watching this right now may not agree with me, and you know what? That's perfectly fine. I get it. I understand completely. Strictly speaking, I think Blinken is right. I don't think that $6 billion had enough time to get into its involvement of what happened in Israel over the weekend. But to me, it's a technical defense. Now, here's why I say that. Let me show you another interview that our beloved Secretary of State gave over the weekend. This was to Meet the Press, or as Rush used to call it, Meet the Depressed. I want you to listen to the question that he's asked by Kristen Welker of NBC News, the new host of Meet the Press. Listen to this and tell me what you guys think.
Away.
What do you say about the argument that money is fungible? So Iran may have known this money is coming and used other funds to help fund this attack that happened.
Iran has unfortunately always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism, on supporting groups like Hamas, and
okay, then why?
It's done that.
Okay, then why did you give him the money? If you knew that the Iranians do this stuff, if you know that they focus their humanitarian aid on using it for terrorism, then why the hell did you give them the money? Why did you give them access to it? You know what you're dealing with. You're dealing with a bunch of animals. Intelligent animals, cagey animals, but animals nonetheless. What in the world is the matter with you guys? But let's play it. Let's let him finish it. We'll let him finish it. So here's the rest of his answer.
There have been sanctions. It's done that when there haven't been sanctions, and it's always prioritized that. And again, I come back to the proposition that these funds have always been, under the law, available to Iran to use for humanitarian purposes. The Trump administration set up a very similar mechanism to enable Iran to use these kinds of assets for humanitarian purposes. We've done the same thing.
You weenie.
I want to drill down.
You weenie. Oh my gosh, he just weenie. Just this guy. With the Trump administration. Oh, shut up. Shut up. Nimrod. Sorry, it's just, there's only so much incompetence that I can stand. And when incompetence starts running its mouth, that's when I just start going up. It's bad enough that I know you're stupid. It's when you start talking and proving it to me is when it gets worse. But you catch her question. Are these monies fungible? In other words, the Iranians knew this $6 billion was getting freed up. Maybe they've already got money in their national budget to do certain humanitarian things. How do we know they didn't shift that money to that they didn't shift this money to try to help out Hamas on this attack? Well, okay. Maybe. We don't know. But I think what Kristen Welker asked was a much better question than Dana Bash. Much, much better question. Now, that's the question of, did the Americans help fund this attack over the weekend, either directly or indirectly. Directly, not. I mean, for all of the, frankly, idiocy, stupidity, incompetence, etc., I would hate to think that our government is so evil that they would deliberately give monies knowing full good and well they would go toward a terrorist attack against one of its allies. Okay, and for the record, I am not accusing our current administration of that. Lest the YouTube gods be listening. I do think, however, indirectly by actions over the years that we've helped fund this. As a matter of fact, let me go back to the top because I saw a comment from earlier that's going to kind of set up what I'm about to say next. Leanne, you asked the question, do you think it's why Obama and Clinton haven't responded yet? Well, Clinton I can't necessarily speak to. But Obama? May I remind everybody that back in 2016, we gave $1 billion in untraceable cash on pallets delivered on a C-4 airplane to the Iranians? I mean, I don't have the clip pulled up, but Robert Barnes brought up a really good point, and it's this. And that is, Hamas is very well funded. They may not have economic infrastructure for squat, but trust me, they've got enough money flowing into them from all around the world from various places. Give them time and give them everything else, then yeah, they could put together the weapons and the manpower to pull off the kind of attack they did over the weekend. So no, I don't think that $6 billion was used directly toward what happened this weekend. I think it's altogether possible, as Kristen Welker is alluding to, that the Iranians realized they were going to get access to it and then shifted around some monies. Or it could very well be that Hamas was already had enough cash sitting on hand that they were able over time to do the planning on this thing. So yeah, there's a lot to be thought about there. Now, there's also a question that has been floating around, and we may as well get into it. Okay? May as well get into it. And that is, did any of the arms that we left behind in various places around the world, or that we have delivered to, by the way, have they wound up being used in other places in the world? More specifically, did any of that stuff make its way into the attack on Israel over the weekend? Well, hate to bring this up, but yeah, let's talk about it. This is from the Post-Millennial. Flashback. U.S. weapons left behind during Afghanistan withdrawal would be used in terrorist attacks against Israel, IDF official warned. Quote, we are very worried that some of these capabilities are going to fall to Hezbollah and Hamas hands. Article written by Ari Hoffman. We read the following. An Israeli commander said that U.S. small arms that were left behind during President Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan in August of 2021 have found their way into the hands of Palestine in the Gaza Strip. Weapons the U.S. abandoned during the tumultuous and deadly withdrawal were seized by the Taliban. Following the August 2021 U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, which saw 13 service members killed, billions of dollars of U.S. weapons and equipment, including Black Hawk helicopters, fell into the hands of the Taliban. An Israeli commander told Newsweek that the IDF has seen the weapons used by terrorist organizations in Gaza. The weapons continue to be a revenue source for the Taliban, who have sold and smuggled the weapons out of Afghanistan. The commander was also very concerned that, quote, they can research capabilities, and then learn how to manufacture them. I'm talking specifically about Iran. The other problem, he added, is that we are very worried that some of these capabilities are going to fall to Hezbollah and Hamas hands. It has been widely reported that Tehran has been reverse engineering U.S. weapons technology, including drones. According to Newsweek, the Biden administration has alleged that Tehran has copied the U.S. design for TOW anti-tank missiles, quote, to develop the Tupin system, which has been wielded by Hezbollah and fellow Axis of Resistance militias in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. Oh, boy. We helped give them the money, and now it turns out we're finding out we helped give them the arms. Now, that's just the stuff coming out of Afghanistan. I know what some of y'all out there are thinking, be you watching on Rumble or on YouTube, etc. Did any of that stuff that gets sent to Ukraine make its way down to the Middle East? I have not seen anything reported directly. Now, that doesn't mean it's not out there. I'm just saying I haven't seen it yet. So I don't want to make a comment about weapons for Ukraine making their way into the hands of Middle Eastern terrorists. Okay? But if they came in from Afghanistan, they can just as easily come down from Ukraine. I'm just saying. There are reasons why the U.S. needs to mind its own business when it comes to foreign affairs. And yeah, Leanne, yep, you're right. You're absolutely right. And next we're going to find out. Good question. Well, I mean, like I said, this stream is not necessarily to give definitive final answers, but I know that people out there are thinking a lot of the same things. Let's just talk about it. You know, I mean, because Leanne, you and I are probably on the same wavelength. I know Gypsy's probably on the same wavelength. Same thing with up in Connecticut, you know, small time republic. I mean, you know, people who are watching on Rumble, we're thinking the same thing. Let's talk this stuff out. You know, if we can find documentation for it, yeah, let's put it out there and talk about it. If it's speculation, let's call it speculation. If we don't know, we don't know. That's why, I mean, not that I'm trying to be, you know, bragging about therapeutic properties, but I think a live stream like this one on a day like this is kind of needed. You know, and on a side note, for everybody who's watching right now, whether you're doing it on YouTube or Rumble or on Twitter, man, I want to thank you for being here, because there's 1,000,001 places you guys could go and get your information about what's going on with this thing. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're part of the audience. So, yep, we helped supply the arms and we helped supply the money. Now, what do we do about all this? In other words, laying aside everything else, what should the U.S. do about this? You know, well, I'll give you some opinions, and I want to hear your take on this. I want to go back to that interview discussion that Viva Fry and Barnes were doing the other night, and I'm going to play these in succession, and I want to get your guys' take on this. So let me get this set up, and we'll start with my first of finally what is the last of my 3 clips. Folks, take a listen to this.
We should stay the hell out of this. Israel hasn't asked us to come in. The great risk is if a bunch of other powers jump into this, and then you do have a global war. Israel is more than able and capable of defending itself. Whatever its security failures over this past week are on Israel, but its troops, its sophisticated troops outnumber Hamas 5-1. Its military firepower technology way outdoes Hamas. Hamas knows its only chance is if Israel or if America gets directly involved in it, like have troops on the ground, like we did with Beirut. Reagan was smart enough to pull us out of there. And what happened when we got attacked in Beirut? Did Reagan say, oh, we got to be uber macho and just go in and mass murder everybody? No, he got it the hell out because it was the right move. It's not, it's not, we don't need to be there. Israel is more than able and capable of defending itself. And under Netanyahu, I have no doubt will.
Okay. For my part, I think that's absolutely the smart take. Yeah, good point. Good point. No, I have not seen this. I have not seen that. Okay, now I know what Leanne's getting at here. Okay, now I'm putting it together. No, I have not seen this video. That's interesting. That's very interesting. You got to check that one out. Ooh, now see, this is my worry, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I think, for my part, to go back to that video clip we just played, I think Barnes is absolutely right. The U.S. needs to stay out of this one. Okay? Which goes to something else. Why is it that we have to inject ourselves everywhere around the world? You know, I've got an old friend from Texas, and she has an expression, it ain't my chicken, I ain't plucking it. Translation, if we don't have a reason to be involved in it, just stay out of it. Which right now I think we desperately need to do. We need to stay out of this thing. Because Barnes is right. I mean, when they can call up 300,000 reservists in 48 hours, get them armed, get them in position, get them ready to go, and slap down a siege on the Gaza Strip such that you're cutting off water, electricity, food, and every other kind of supply, trust me, they've got every capability to settle this matter themselves. The U.S. does not need to put one single solitary boot on the ground. Now, I have heard, and I don't have the article ready to go, but I have heard that the aircraft carrier group headed up by the Gerald R. Ford is steaming into the Mediterranean right now. Okay, cool. No problem. All good. We'll be here. Yeah, the Gerald R. Ford task force is steaming into the Mediterranean right now. Now, for what purpose, I'm not sure. Maybe it's evacuation of American citizens. I'm not sure what they're doing. But I have heard that they are en route to the Gulf if they're not there now. So yes, the U.S. should absolutely stay out of this. Beyond what they're doing with the Navy right now, just stay out of it. This thing has, I mean, I want to go back to that quote that is attributed to Netanyahu. We will do to our enemies, what we do to our enemies will resonate for generations. Their worry among a lot of people is that Netanyahu is going to let his instincts for vengeance get the better of his brain. Don't get now, let me be very clear with what I'm about to say next. Okay? Be very clear. The Israelis have every right to defend themselves given what's happened. They were attacked without provocation. I would expect them to defend the state of Israel the same way that we went after Al-Qaeda after 9/11, and to bring down them the wrath of God doing it, to hit Hamas so hard that they never, ever think about doing this again for the longest time. Ooh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Hadn't thought about that, but I didn't. Was the Gerald R. Ford in the Taiwan Straits or in Chinese waters? Ooh, if they were, yeah, that pulls us definitely out of position. Okay, yes, Israel should defend themselves. The worry that I've got is this: Netanyahu's going to take this so far that he's going to cause powers in the Middle East to start uniting against Israel. There's retaliation, and then there's just asking for it. There's no good way for me to express this. I know what I think I would like to see Netanyahu do and the Israeli Defense Force. I get it. But on the other hand, at some point, it's like, okay, we're going to take out their capabilities to do this. We're going to decimate their leadership. We're going to do everything else and stop right there so that they never do this again. And if they do, it's going to be a really long time before they do it. That's my worry with Netanyahu. He's going to let his instinct for vengeance override his common sense. There's ways of doing it, and there are ways of doing it. Now, are you asking me how to do it? Don't look at me. I haven't got the answer. I'm not there. I'm just saying that's my worry. If he lets this thing go too far, he could very well start a wide open regional conflict. And I'm praying Netanyahu's got the wisdom to know just how far to take this and no further. A couple other clips I'll play for you real quick. A couple other clips. Get this one pulled up. I think this one's definitely worth talking about. So take a listen to this.
Now, that doesn't really solve the problem. I see a lot of the, macho types saying go in there and crush everybody.
Leanne, he was not referring to you, dear. I love you. I want you to know he wasn't referring to you. He's talking about some people on the internet. Just putting that out there.
How's that going to achieve anything? It hasn't achieved anything in forever. Until and unless you get the Arab world to no longer use the Palestinian cause to promote their global ambitions and domestic aspirations, you will not solve the problem of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, period. And unless you're going to kill everybody, you're not going to solve it.
Well,
there'll be people who bore the resentment and want to drive you to the sea. That's just the empirical reality of that conflict.
Okay. Yes, Leanne, I'm sure it wasn't you, darling. I promise you, he was not talking about you specifically. So before you saddle your horse, just But Barnes brings up a really good point, and I think it ought to be considered. Going back to something that was said earlier, part of what was so ingenious about the Abraham Accords is that Trump got the Arab side of that argument to realize, look, we're not going to grow unless we can find some way to get some mutual security agreements amongst ourselves. And the point's being made here, you're not going to get this thing to stop until everybody stops using the Palestinians, Hamas, Hezbollah, etc., or using the Palestinian population in general, try to further their own ends. One last clip. And I think this one's really good as well. So I want to get you guys' take on this.
The moment they don't have any Palestine to fight for, the moment they don't have an Israel to abolish, is the moment they lose that the Palestinians lose all political currency and means of financial support, and Hamas and the Hezbollahs and the Palestinian Liberation Authority lose all their power. That's why this game is locked in, and that's why Trump understood the right way. Unless you broke into the Arab side of the equation, you were never going to get peace in the Middle East. So whatever Israel does, hopefully they make their borders more secure than. I mean, they said they were very secure. Clearly they weren't. Something went wrong. Whether it was a staged event or a complete failure of their defense, it was a failure. There's no getting around that. But bombing the dickens out of Gaza, what's that going to do?
just some food for thought. I mean, like I said at the very top of this thing, I'm not necessarily coming here saying I've got all the answers and, you need to think like I do. I value the fact that everybody here has an opinion on this thing, and I would expect no less. Like I say, just with everything going on, I thought it might be useful to let people cathartically and, in any number of ways, just put out there what they're thinking. But I mean, the point's valid. I mean, how long is this cycle going to keep on going till we finally figure out how to break it? We almost got there. I'm not saying peace would have reigned in the Middle East, but we almost got to the point where the world would have been a whole lot more calm just by agreements being. Matter of fact, I mean, everybody talks about the Abraham Accords. There were 2 other treaties being signed at the tail end of Trump's first term with other nations. So, like I said, right now we've got 9 dead Americans, at least reportedly 1,300 dead between Israelis and Palestinians, 5,000 people injured, and this is going to get worse before it gets better. So, I wanted to come on here and talk about it, give you guys my take on it. In the end, here's where I'm at. Number 1, the U.S. absolutely under no circumstances should get involved in this thing. Okay? Offer humanitarian assistance on both sides. Offer to broker peace. And that's a really good point, Gypsy. A really good point. A friend of mine said something the other day that I think is worth repeating. Everything they accuse Trump of doing, the Biden administration is now doing it themselves. And I'm not trying to turn this into a partisan thing. I'm really not. But the point's valid. They said Trump would do this. They said Trump would do that. He never did any of it. What's the Biden administration doing? This and that. So just some food for thought. But yeah, it's about, 3:30 in the afternoon? Look, I know you guys are either at work or working remotely. Leanne, you lucky devil, you. And I'm going to let you guys get back to what you're doing. Like I said, I wanted to come on here, give some thoughts about it, give some information as I was able to put it together. And, like I said, just let you guys talk about it, and for everybody who stopped by, Leanne, Gypsy, up in Connecticut, Small Time Republic, all you folks watching over there on Rumble, you lurkers, you lovable lurkers, glad to have you guys here as always. We'll be back with videos this week. I'll see if I can put something out tonight. And thank you all. It's very kind of you. No, it's Brian with an I. It's Brian with an I, like a good Irish boy should. Yeah, Gypsy. Gypsy. I was glad to see you stop by. You said you've been lurking for the longest time. See, I tell everybody all the time, we're a friendly bunch. We don't bite, unless it's a whole different context. But that's something else. But yeah, Gypsy, we're glad to have you here. We really are. Glad you put in with comments because we're glad to have you. So for everybody who stopped by, everybody who's watching, we'll be back with videos this week. I'll see if I can't put something out tonight. Wednesday, 7 p.m., I'm going to have a friend of mine, Culture Casino, stop by. If you're not subbing to his channel, I recommend it. His specialty, yes, please don't, share the video around. Share the video by all means. But yeah, Culture Casino is going to be here this Wednesday night, 7 p.m. We're going to talk about some things related to Hollywood and pop culture in general. His area of specialty is the business side of Hollywood. And you talk about one very sharp cat. Come back, bring some friends with you. 7 o'clock this Thursday night. As always, we'll be back this Saturday morning for Front Porch Brunch. And tell your friends, bring them with you. Culture Casino can speak on just about any topic. He is one sharp dude, very sharp dude. This Wednesday night, 7 p.m., this Saturday morning at 10:30 a.m. Look for some videos in between. Guys, as always, thank you so very much. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope this has been helpful. So you guys have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of your Columbus Day. We'll see you later.